And the more or less idea there for a while was no one really thought the rules were going to be enforced too seriously. And then a couple of years ago, or last year, we have Forest and Everton getting points deductions, and then everybody taking it a little bit more seriously. Now, what's happened more recently is the Premier League is possibly introducing other regulations in line with UEFA. I can't be bothered telling you all the different acronyms, but bear with me on that one. And more or less then the idea is that the PFA, Professional Football Association, are now quite annoyed and considering legal action against the Premier League because there is possibly a type of salary cap also going to be implemented in short order.
Understandably, supporters in here and up and down the country, when they see FFP or they see their clubs, whether it's Man City, Everton, Forest, there's been other clubs under investigation at different times. And we get frustrated because we all get excited by the transfer market. We want to see our team spending money. No one likes the people who are involved in red tape, the Premier League and these type of people. But with your background, would you say PSR is good for the game?
Well, it depends. I mean, you go back 10, 15 years and even a little bit before and afterwards, and I think football has and still has a major problem in terms of cost control generally. Everybody spending whatever they wanted to, huge losses, whether that's sustainable. That's the whole idea around the independent football regulator you guys have been talking about for a long time. UEFA's idea at the beginning was just try and make everything a little bit more sustainable. So you had losses over £1 billion in European competition for those clubs participating in those competitions, then reducing just before COVID to around 200 million. It's been problems since, obviously, but there's still a major problem in English football, never mind anywhere else. Premier League clubs combined made losses of over £1.3 billion in the 22-23 season, and that's with revenues of over £6 billion. So I think if it's PSR, if it's what FFP used to be, if it's the independent regulator trying to make everyone a little bit more cost control sensitive, I think generally in my mind, that's a good thing. The problem is always going to be, why can't we spend more? Why can't we do this? That debate isn't going to go anytime soon, I don't think.
It has to be flawed in some. Look, I don't understand it massively. Like a lot of fans probably won't do, but I look at our club with Adam, with Man United, and you think we have to sell local players that we've invested a lot of time in. A lot of people talk about Garnacho and Mainu, and Mainu's been there since 7, 8 years of age, and we're thinking now we've come to a point. It might have mismanagement from the club. I don't know. Where we might have to sell him to actually start bringing people in. Also, another thing that I don't understand that you'll have to explain to me. Do we talk about Garnacho going for 60 million quid because he's a homegrown player, and that allows them then to spend 180 million quid or something? Was it? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, on the first point, I think it's always the case that that is the out that all owners and chief execs have, which is sell your great young players. By the way, City have done it brilliantly over the past 10 years, almost £400 million of profit coming in from homegrown. The thing with Garnacho or Maino or anyone else is when you are basically selling a homegrown player, you account for all of the transfer profits straight away into your accounts. So if it's 60 mil goes in that season if it's guaranteed money. For then when you're buying players, usually it's not quite on layaway, but you're doing it in installments and you're usually accounting for that transfer fee over the length of that player contract. So you might get 60 in, you might actually only need to pay 10 mil in installment for the next player coming in along with his or her wages as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're talking about all aspects of the game, so it looks like you cover everything, every facet of it. The big story probably this season, in terms of contract renewals. So are you sort of saying that you're almost like an agent for certain players as well, or you just you get involved in the deals? There's a frustration, I think, from Liverpool supporters that those 3 players have not signed contracts, or especially Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk. Because you're involved in all facets of the game, can you understand what the rationale is from Liverpool? Because I think most fans up and down the country, even from other clubs, be thinking, why don't you sign them, the great players?
Yeah, I mean, I think you and Gary and Paul had great discussions on this in the past as well. I'm not going to say anything revolutionary. Only to say is Liverpool's general approach over the last period of time has always been be careful about renewing over 28, 29, 30-year-olds. And I think the fan base have a slight issue in that there's this thing called confirmation bias, as we talked about, which is, fans will necessarily think past performance is going to be the same as future performance. And because of that, and because they are 3 such iconic players, everybody's going to be thinking, well, just simply renew. And you're exactly right what you said before. There's probably 3 or 4 variables. The one is age of the player. Second is position of the player. Usually strikers and midfielders get paid more than defenders and goalkeepers. And the third is the length of that contract. And because we don't know any of those variables and we don't know what the players want, usually over 32, 33-year-olds want to have 2 or 3 year extensions because that will keep them to basically retirement. And the other thing I would also say is, and it came out in the summer, it was a brilliant book I'd really recommend, not that I'm making this about a book club or anything, but Ian Graham's book, How to Win the Premier League, ex-head of Liverpool data science, was basically explaining how they assign a points per season basis to all of these players. They will know how much Van Dijk, how much Trent, how much Salah is worth for them generally. And what you don't want to be doing as you're getting players into your 30s is paying them huge amounts of money and them not actually using that value on the pitch. You want to make sure that the biggest players, the most transfer fees, the highest wages are being used on the pitch. And that's how they're going to, I think, base that decision.
I'm probably of the view, and probably most Liverpool fans, that you're desperate for them to stay, and you're always sort of keeping in the back of your mind, oh, they'll sort it out. They'll get around the table and they'll sort it out one way or another. We don't want to lose them. Where else are they going to go? Do you think that would, because obviously it's a lot more scientific than that, that's what you're basically saying. Do you think where Liverpool are right now and what they've offered these players, do you think that would radically change between now and the end of the season? Do you think they'd be pushed into a corner, or do you think they're so set on the numbers that they wouldn't move for anyone? And we are talking about 2 of probably the greatest players of all time for Liverpool in Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 things. So, negotiating sometimes against Michael Edwards is a very difficult thing, just as you can imagine with lots of other technical directors at the time and otherwise. But if I was the agent for those players, you're more or less justifying why you're going to renew because of the replacement value and the cost to the club of doing that. And that is baked into then signing on fees, loyalty bonuses, and then how much they're going to earn per week with the variable bits alongside it. But ultimately, all of those things go in the mix of then making that decision. The biggest thing, which you guys will know much more than me, is that dressing room discussion becomes very important as well. You can't be then saying, well, Trent's going to be on this amount or Virgil's going to be on this amount, because then that lifts everyone up and everybody then knocks on the manager's door, or not the manager's door anymore, but the technical director or chief executive asking for that next amount of money. So I think Liverpool are really careful about, they don't really renew over 30-year-olds, and that's part of the issue. And the other important thing in my mind is, Liverpool have been paying these 3 players at an undervalue for the last 18 months or so. Whatever Salah was worth 3 years ago, it might be worth a lot more now in terms of his performance levels. And then there's another, more cynical view is there's a lot of data research suggesting that players that are looking to renew their deals actually overperform in the season of the renewal and massively underperform in the couple of seasons after that renewal. So it wouldn't put it past them at all for Edwards and Ward and Hughes to be playing an absolute blinder. It'll all be determined at the end of the season if they play well or not and win the league and Champions League.
Gareth, you're a supporter. You've just listened to that. Now, there's a lot of pressure from the supporters, the banners in the Kop, give them what they want and this type of thing. Can you understand the club's stance, or do you think it's ridiculous and these lads should be rewarded because we need them in the team next season? They're still the 2 best players in the team.
I think it's mad that the 3 of them have reached the same stage at the same time, and that however you cook that up, however you present that looks to be a big mistake. And there's got to be question. I mean, there's context, obviously. Jurgen Klopp announcing he's leaving mid-season. A lot of people that you mentioned there also going, but then coming back, etc. So there was a bit of turmoil at the club maybe, and there was a bit of where are Liverpool going? What are they going to be doing this season? What's this new manager going to be like? Are they going to be challenging for stuff? All of those things. But they've answered those questions, I think. You know what I mean?